Hello and welcome to Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez. There are really only two ways that people deal with the state of their mental health. They either get help for it or they suppress it, right? Well, I want to look at a few stories of the way some people are dealing with their mental health, some advice as well, but also something you might not consider as to how to deal with stress at all.
All right, hands back. Come on, splash through it with acceleration. Beautiful.
Carter Bonus of Spectrum Golf Apparel doing more than bringing attention to his line of clothing and accessories, but helping people understand how he was able to do it. Carter's journey was a rough one, undergoing intense bullying at school because he is autistic.
So when I was little and I went to school, I was always shy.
Look at
I was always shy. And when I went to different schools, I was always bullied almost every single day. But then I had some friends that helped me
Why do you think you were bullied?
because I was different from everybody else.
Unable to cope with his emotions, sometimes he would take out his frustrations in extended rants. Then one day, his mom, who is a therapist, got an unexpected call from the school.
He at school one day told the teachers, right, if something else goes wrong today, I'm going to kill myself. And luckily, they knew me, know who I am. He was not Baker acted. They called me instead to come pick him up. But that was just a very scary thing for me to go through as a mother, dealing in the profession I'm in, and to have my son, right, to have these same things because he wasn't being heard, and because of the treatment he was receiving in school, that he felt at that moment that was the only out from the way he was being treated.
Dr. Thelma Tinney would go on to create a nonprofit in Carter's honor, calling it Healing Arts Institute of South Florida, because it was mental health services that helped save his life and give him the confidence to focus on his future. Carter calls his line of golf apparel Spectrum because he's considered high functioning on the autism spectrum scale. And while society might say to hide his diagnosis, Carter embraces it and encourages others to do the same.
A lot of times we don't think we need therapy, but there is something missing, and we don't want to be labeled as crazy or the person who can't seem to pull it together. And I just encourage you to think of therapy this way. And one of my clients defined it as this. And so he's in therapy and he was having a bit of a time. And again, the stigma attached to receiving therapy still caused him to think, okay, I don't need therapy today, Dr. Tinney, but I need to talk to you. I need to see you. And his exact words were, I don't need therapy. I just need to come and vent, and we talk about some strategies to get through what I'm going through. And I giggled and I said, oh, kind of sounds like therapy to me, right? So if you can look at therapy as that place for you to go and vent, and then develop some strategies how to deal with whatever it is you're dealing with, that's exactly what therapy is. It is not this thing that society has made it to be where something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. We're all going through the same things, myself included, my son and I included. We have our own therapist. You think there's nothing that this person can tell me that I haven't already thought of and tried. And that's why I'm not going to go. I promise you, I, with 2 PhDs, think the same thing. There is nothing that a therapist can lend to me that I don't already know that I haven't tried. And every time I go in with my therapist, I gain a new perspective, a new something that I did not think of to try.
You can come on back, Carla.
A South Florida nurse hoping to help save lives by talking about her need for mental health services. She first started opening up on social media. Now she's sitting down with her therapist, Dr. Thelma Tenney of Healing Arts Institute of South Florida, and sharing her story on camera.
If there ever was a time that we need to access mental health therapy or speak to a professional about our mental well-being as nurses or anyone really who have worked over the last 2 years in the healthcare field, it's now. I know a lot of companies are focusing on accessing mental health because they recognize that, especially in our field, that a lot of us are facing burnout. I personally was not in the ER on a day-to-day basis, but I was in the operating room and just dealing with taking care of patients during the COVID pandemic and even post-COVID era, which we're still not out of, but we're still dealing with that on a day-to-day basis. Not like it was in 2020, but I think that there is a lot of post-traumatic stress, having experienced and seen people die minute by minute, hour by hour, and with trying to help to save lives, and sometimes it was just futile because of this disease. Now, what we're seeing now and what a lot of us are experiencing is the trauma from living through that. And so I think it's crucial for those of us that are facing these stressors to access mental health therapy. We can't fix this on our own, and I know we're fixers, and a lot of times we think that we've gotten this. We're providers, we're healers, so we know how to heal others. So we should be able to heal ourselves, and we're not able to all the time. And for those of us that are still struggling with the trauma of experiencing multiple deaths on a daily basis, or the inability to save everyone, because that's our job. Our job is to save people, and we weren't able to do that. We're now suffering the consequences of those failures that we perceive as failures, but really it was out of our hands. Let's access mental health. Let's seek professional help to just process grief and the outcome of not being able to save everyone. But what therapy has done for me is giving me an opportunity to deal with traumas that you don't realize just takes a little piece of you, and it impacts how you interact with others and how do you go through your day. And having spent the time, which for me, which you was a long time, it was weekly, then bi-weekly, then once a month, then every other month, and consistently for probably 18 months until I felt I can breathe. And now I have the tools to just help myself process things when I come through challenges in life, help myself in setting boundaries in my life. That is one of the things that I got from therapy, setting boundaries in the people, especially loved ones, because sometimes you don't realize that area in your life too, you do need to set boundaries with the people that are closest to you.
I'm on social media, right, and I follow my clients and they follow me, and that's okay, and that's how we check up on each other. And I saw recently that Carla has been posting a lot different, and you have become a mental health advocate and sharing your story, and that is amazing to me. Again, just to be able to assist someone in their journey. And I always tell you guys that my goal is for you to not need me.
Yes, you sure do. You do tell us that.
So that is my ultimate goal, as you said, to point out what skills you already have, help you develop additional skills, and then I pull out. And as you so eloquently said, once a year, right? You come in for that checkup. or when there's that life-changing event. There's the death in the family, there's the baby, there's the move, there's the new relationship, for all of those high stress situations. So I'm honored to be your therapist, and I'm honored to have you share your experience. And again, I say it all the time, I truly do love what I do, and maybe that's just why I have such great clients.
And it shows that you love what you do. The compassion is always there. And as I mentioned before, the connection was there, and that helps a lot too. Thank you very much again.
Well, thank you. I know we're both so uncomfortable sitting here on this couch.
Not really.
Healing Arts Institute of South Florida offers mental health services to adults, but is known for offering no-cost mental health services primarily to youth 22 and younger, along with their families. For more information, go to healingartssfl.org. As the pressures of this life are reaching a boiling point, the reality of dealing with our mental health wellness is becoming more and more evident in every aspect of our lives. Now, Dr. Thelma Tenney, a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of the nonprofit Healing Arts Institute, is making sure people who need help coping get it, whether they are insured or not.
If you don't have healthy boundaries, that's when your mental health is going to deteriorate, because you're trying to be any and all to everything and everybody.
Dr. Tenney knows this firsthand. She began the nonprofit after her son Carter was diagnosed with Asperger's and felt a need for mental health services herself.
The anxiety, the stress, the depression, the guilt of feeling like, what did I do wrong? What could I have done different? Not really having a support system designed for me. What would you like to tell the kids who maybe have a diagnosis like you have, maybe autism or ADHD or something? What do you want to tell them?
That it's okay to feel different, and when you're upset, really upset, just talk to someone you trust.
It's a big difference to walk into an office and someone can identify with you that looks like you, that talks like you, that has the same background, the same aspirations, the same upbringing. So it really makes a difference, and not having that was my motivation to provide that for other moms.
What the mission for Healing Arts is to end stigma around mental health in marginalized communities. And when you grow up around it, people don't realize that they're growing up in trauma because you're around it. But it forms who you are in some way. It makes you have an edge to you, or it makes you afraid of something. And Healing Arts is trying to say, no, it's okay to ask for help.
Sometimes it's like maternity. You don't know that you have to elect for maternity care until you're pregnant, and you can't use it. So that's where the underinsured come in. They have health insurance, but it doesn't have mental health component to it. And then there's just those who don't have insurance at all.
Dr. Tenney's team is armed with extensive credentials, interactive techniques, and original handbooks. As a licensed sexologist, she also specializes in generational trauma and couples therapy. She has also authored a comprehensive workbook with her former professor and now colleague.
My experience and my other colleagues' experiences around things that are happening, or relationship problems during the pandemic, people are realizing that they have things that they just cannot work out without a professional. And so I would say she probably get everything from stuff that's happening in the bedroom to stuff that's happening in the boardroom. This is our book, and it is basically a plan for people who are already married and didn't ask some questions they should have asked beforehand, or people who are planning to get married. And it's like a business plan, just like a mission statement, the whole bit. goals, everything that goes with that, budgeting, everything that would be a part of a relationship once a person got married.
Dr. Tenney believes in the benefits of mental health services so much that she and her staff take their own advice, holding group therapy for the therapist.
So one of the things that I loved is that we actually drew a picture, and then we actually kind of analyzed each other. And it really was like a healing of just being able to share. So we already know 10% or 50% of really why we feel better is because we actually feel heard by whenever we're talking. And so could you imagine when a group of clinicians are helping each other? It just felt like there was no judgment.
It's different when you are with people who know what they're doing rather than having someone who got a 5-minute introduction of this is how the meeting's supposed to go and this is what you're supposed to talk about. You need people who are trained, number one. You can't just have someone from HR do it.
Healing Arts Institute is not only looking to serve clients in-house or online, but on location.
What Healing Arts has to offer, well above and beyond so many others, is our willingness and our ability to go into schools and work with the officials, work with the kids. In a natural and symbiotic relationship. We want to be able to bring what we have to offer out of the office and, into the environments where these kids are and these people are who actually need that help.
And if you're questioning the benefits of mental health services, Carter's confidence has led him to create his own line of golf apparel and often plays in golf tournaments. You can learn more about the Healing Arts Institute at healingartssfl.org. At the top of the show, I mentioned there's another way you might want to deal with mental health stress or just the state of your mind, right? Your mind, body, spirit. And I know a lot of people, the struggle with the stigma around getting mental health is real. So if that's you, there is something else you can consider, and that might be in an alpha class.
Can you get a mic check? Hi, I'm Nikki. Welcome to Alpha. Life is busy. Every day we ask so many questions. What should I wear? What's the weather going to be like? What's happening today? How am I going to fit everything in? But then there are those bigger questions. Like, why am I here? Where am I heading? Is this it? Is there more to life than this? These are life's big questions. But there's rarely enough time to think them through properly.
We all have different perspectives on the meaning of life and faith, and Alpha is an opportunity to explore life's big questions.
This is a great place to come together and talk about them openly and honestly. I'm Gemma.
I'm Toby.
And this is Alpha.
Whoa, that's a big one.
If there really is a God, and I was able to ask one question, why I wasn't dunking when I was 10 years old?
That's a good one. What's next? That'd be my question.
I'll probably ask him to win numbers on the lottery number, probably. So I can retire.
What's heaven like?
I'd probably ask him what is he scared of.
I don't think I would ask God a question because I don't want to know.
What happens when I die?
Can I come back?
Why couldn't my parents stay together when I was a kid?
How did I get on this path that I'm on?
What their plan was for all this and whether or not we lived up to it.
Am I doing this right?
How'd I do?
How'd I do? That's what I'd ask. How'd I do? If what I'm doing is kind of like aligned with my purpose in life, I would ask God, are we cool?
I guess the ultimate question would be why?
Why this and not nothing? Why do bad things happen to good people?
Why the struggle?
I would ask him why he made life so hard sometimes.
Friends of mine told me that the first night they came to Alpha, they sat in their car for half an hour waiting and watching people going in. And eventually, when they'd seen enough normal-looking people going in, they thought they'd give it a try.
And one thing that might be going through your mind is, am I going to be the only one there who doesn't believe all this stuff, who's not a Christian, that doesn't go to church? Well, if that's you, then you're in the right place. Alpha is designed for people who wouldn't call themselves Christians or who are not regular churchgoers.
It might feel a bit strange to be discussing life and faith with people that you've never met before, but the best thing about Alpha is often the great friendships that are formed over the weeks.
For much of my life, I was not remotely interested in Christianity. In fact, I didn't think I'd ever come to something like Alpha. I was not brought up as a Christian. My father was a secular Jew. He was an agnostic, and my mother didn't go to church, and I had no interest at all in Christianity. First of all, I just thought it was so boring. Everything to me about church, Christianity, religion was just dull and dreary, and it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty. I didn't know why, but I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I also thought it was untrue. I thought I'd sort of thought it through, and I'd come up with these intellectual objections, and I called myself, very pretentiously, I called myself a logical determinist. And I quite enjoyed arguing with people who called themselves Christians. And at university, I had a bit of a reputation for being an argumentative atheist. And I also thought it was irrelevant to my life. I couldn't see how someone who'd lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, could have any relevance to my life today. It just seemed outdated and irrelevant. But at the same time, looking back now, I would say something was missing. I say that because I don't think I was living in the moment. I was always looking forward to the next thing in life. So when I was at school, I was thinking, when I finish my exams, maybe that will be when I'm going to really start to enjoy life. I finished my exams, and then after about 3 weeks, I started to think there's got to be more to life than this. And I thought, well, maybe when I've left school, that will be what life's all about. And then I left school, and after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. I thought, well, maybe the answer is to get a girlfriend. And somehow, I don't know how I managed it, but I managed to find a girlfriend. Again, after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. And basically, there was something missing. I was longing for more.
The actor Jim Carrey once said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they've ever dreamed of, so they would know that's not the answer." Some people dream of having their name in lights, of fame and fortune. Some people dream of finding happiness through relationships, careers, money, whatever it may be. But do you ever get that niggly feeling that, as good as those things are, there must be more to life?
Yeah, all too often life just doesn't turn out the way we think it should. And even when it does and we achieve our wildest dreams, it's somehow never quite enough. It just doesn't satisfy. It's like there's something missing. The comedian and actor Russell Brand said, "Drugs and alcohol are not my problem. Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution to fill up a hole inside me." And Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." In other words, I'm the one who fulfills the longing that's deep inside every human heart. Jesus claimed to be the one person who can satisfy that spiritual hunger.
Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of the rock group Queen, had amassed a huge fortune and attracted millions of fans. But he admitted in an interview shortly before his death that he was desperately lonely. He said this, "You can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man, and that's the most bitter type of loneliness. Success has brought me world idolization and millions of pounds, but it's prevented me from having the one thing we all need, a loving, ongoing relationship."
Ultimately, there's only one relationship that is totally loving and goes on forever, and that's a relationship with God. And Jesus said, "I am the way to that relationship." Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life."
As of lately, a lot of picnics.
Traveling, games, and fishing.
Yoga, poetry, kissing.
Love fishing.
Skateboarding. Basketball. Basketball makes me happy.
You want to go first?
Love.
Yeah, love is good.
Shopping.
Coffee, that's an easy one.
Meeting new people makes me happy.
Positive energy. People around me.
Vacation, food, puppies.
Getting my nails done makes me happy.
Music.
I was gonna say music too.
Something that I create.
God makes me happy, and nature
Nature.
Biking around.
A good sunset.
Connecting with people.
Looking at trees and everything and it's just all a miracle for me.
Feeling like I don't have any pressure on me makes me happy.
Feeling like there's some purpose in my life.
A good nap.
Good food, working out, and spending quality time with my family.
I think that's a good answer.
When I was about 17, I was sitting having a burger with two friends, and we were looking out the window and commenting on a few of the stores across the street, and I suddenly realized that I couldn't read any of the signs, even if I squinted. So I asked if I could borrow one of my friend's pair of glasses, and as soon as I put them on, I realized I could see everything, like colors, shapes, words. I was amazed at how everything was so clear. And I could see before, but now I could really see. And to me, that's the best way to describe the difference that Jesus makes. Jesus is the lens through which we see God. And he's also the lens by which we see the world in a totally different way.
Jesus said, I am the truth. Some people's response to a Christian might be, well, it's great for you, you found meaning and purpose in your life, but it's not for me. But when you think about it, that's not actually a logical position, because if Christianity is true, it's of vital importance to every one of us. And if it's not true, it's not great for us, because it means we're deluded. C.S. Lewis was one of the great intellectual giants of the 20th century, probably best known as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. He said this, Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. I come from a family of lawyers, so naturally I wanted to look at the original documents and sources. I never really looked at the evidence before, and I was astonished at how much evidence there is for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. For me, it was through reading these documents that we find in the New Testament that I came to the conclusion, it's true. One of the last cases I did as a lawyer was in the Court of Appeal in front of Lord Denning, an absolutely brilliant mind, perhaps the greatest judge of the 20th century. He said on one occasion that his Bible was his most tattered book in his library. He'd examined the evidence really carefully, and he came to the conclusion, it's true. One former professor of history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. I hadn't realized how many of the pioneers of modern science were believers. Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Locke, Copernicus, Faraday, Kelvin, Pasteur. Francis Collins, one of the greatest scientists of our time, was director of the Human Genome Project, mapping the 3 billion letters in the human DNA, considered by many to be the most significant scientific undertaking of our time. He describes how he encountered Jesus and came to believe in the truth of Christianity.
Well, in the home where I grew up, faith was not something that was talked about very much. My father was a professor of drama, my mother a playwright. When I went to college and those discussions in the dorm late at night about religion began to occur, I had no particular reason to attach value to a faith system. It had never been something I was familiar with or had internalized at all. And I assumed that any religious feelings that anyone held must be on the basis of some emotional experience, and I didn't trust those, or on the basis of some childhood indoctrination, which I felt I was fortunate to have missed. I loved the experience of learning about the human body and all of the components of that, and I particularly loved being introduced to genetics. But then I ended up in the medical school curriculum sitting at the bedside of patients with diseases. This was no longer an abstract study of molecules and organ systems. These were real people. And one afternoon, one of my patients, a wonderful elderly woman, much like a grandmother, who had very bad heart disease. She had a particularly bad episode of chest pain while I was with her. She got through it, and at the end of that, explained to me how her faith was the thing that helped her in that situation. She realized that the doctors around her weren't really giving her that much help, but her faith was. And after she finished her own very personal description of that faith, she turned to me, and I had been silent, and she looked at me quizzically, and she said, "What do you believe, doctor?" And ultimately, I had to admit to myself that her question had made me realize that I had arrived at an answer to the most important issue that we humans ever deal with. Is there a God? And I had arrived there without ever really looking at the evidence. And I was supposed to be a scientist. If there's one thing scientists claim they do, is to arrive at conclusions based upon evidence. And I hadn't taken the trouble to do that. I was greatly assisted by a pastor who lived down the road, who I went and asked about all this, and who gave me a copy of C.S. Lewis's wonderful book, Mere Christianity. Because here was an Oxford scholar, a prodigiously developed intellect, who had traveled the same path. Within those pages, I realized for the first time that one can come to belief on a rational basis, and that in fact, given the many pointers that one sees around oneself in terms of the universe and it having a beginning, and its fine-tuning in terms of the way in which all those constants that determine the behavior of matter and energy seem to have been set just in a certain very precise range to make life possible. And many other things, including my beloved mathematics and why they actually work anyway to describe the universe, something that makes you think the Creator must have been a mathematician. That brought me then to the person of Jesus Christ as a person who was historically extremely well documented. That was news to me. I thought Christ was as much myth as history, and I realized after reading more about it, this was a historical figure upon which we have a great deal of evidence for his existence and his teachings, and even his rising from the dead in a literal way. That day at my patient's bedside started a journey for me. A journey that I was reluctant to begin, but I felt I needed to. A journey that I thought would result in strengthening my atheism, but to my surprise, resulted in my conversion.
There's a difference between knowing facts about someone and really knowing them personally. Now, I've known my husband Phil for 3 years now, but suppose if before we met, I found him on a website called The Amazing Man. Now, there's no doubt I would have looked at him and thought, okay, I'm intrigued. But what if each page was dedicated to his amazing abilities, his sparkling personality, his tender heart, his extraordinary intelligence, and his cooking abilities? Well, I would think, wow, he does sound like an amazing person. But that's head knowledge. But I also have the privilege of being married to him, and I know that he's an amazing person, which is knowledge that comes from experience of relationship, and that's heart knowledge.
When Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking about more than just a kind of intellectual truth. The Hebrew understanding of truth was truth as experienced. And there's a big difference between a kind of intellectual knowledge and a personal knowledge, between your head and your heart. So when someone says, I know Jesus is the truth, they're not just talking about being convinced of the evidence, they're also talking about experiencing a relationship with the risen Jesus Christ. So Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and lastly he said, I am the life. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Jesus came to deal with the things in our lives that stop us from enjoying life to the full, the things that spoil our lives.
I hate shopping. I loathe it. I think I'm allergic to shopping. But occasionally my wife Pippa persuades me to go shopping, and just after Christmas it was the sales and she persuaded me to go shopping, and we went into the shop and we bought this very nice new sweater, same colour as all my other sweaters, and we left the shop and we went to buy a present for her, and we went into this ghastly shop. It was so crowded, it was unbelievable. And even Pippa had had enough and she said, okay, we're leaving. So we went to leave. And as we left, the security alarm went off. And the security guys moved in very quickly and they stopped us all from leaving. And like the crowd that was trying to leave was stopped, and the crowd that was trying to come in was stopped. And we were there right in the middle. The 6 of us who were going through the security at that one time were all taken off and sectioned off from all the rest. And they wanted to see which one of the 6 of us had set off the alarm. So they sent one of them through, and that was fine. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then they sent the next one through. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then the 3rd, then the 4th. None of them set it off. So it was left with Pippa and I were standing there, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm married to a shoplifter. It must be Pippa who's got set off the alarm. So they sent her through, and She didn't set it off. So I thought, oh my goodness, I've obviously got something. Someone must have planted something on me. I'm going to be arrested. I'm going to be sent to prison. All the crowd were watching, both sides. They were just watching this criminal who'd been caught going through. So they went through, and as I went through, the alarm went off. They took me to the side. They opened up my rucksack on my back, and there they found this sweater from the other shop with the tags still on it. I felt so guilty. That was like false guilt. I also sometimes experience true feelings of guilt because I do things that are not right, that are not good. And this is the wonderful news that God loves you and he loves me. God came in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, to die for you and for me. And on the cross, he took all of your guilt, all of my guilt, everything you've ever done wrong, everything I've ever done wrong, said wrong, thought wrong, and he died in our place in order that we could be forgiven. And forgiveness, C.S. Lewis said, it's like a recording of our life wiped completely clean. And when we receive that forgiveness, we find life, and life in all its fullness. And that's what Jesus wants for you and for me. Life in all its fullness. Life at its very, very best.
I think for so many years, I always just strived to be strong in myself. And it was as if that all I needed was me and my buddies and, we'd be like invincible. But the truth is, none of us are. And I don't want to do this thing called life. I don't want to do it on my own. And it kind of feels like my longing for this light inside is now stronger than my fear of what others might think. And people often ask, well, doesn't that make faith like a crutch? And, well, maybe, but, what does a crutch do? A crutch helps you stand, and it makes you stronger. And in that case, sure, I need a bit of that. But especially when it's so much more than that. When this faith inside is also like a backbone, helping me stand tall and helping me be strong when I'm really up against it, facing those odds, whether it's on a mountain or stuck in some jungle or just dealing with the storms, with the storms of life. Sure, I need it. I need that. But at heart, my Christian faith says that I'm known to Christ, bought at a price, blessed with light. Faith says that we're loved, regardless of our mess, regardless of how many times we fall down, and that Jesus somehow picks me up. And sure, I'll reach out to that. Why wouldn't I?
I used to think Christianity was boring, untrue, and irrelevant. But when I read about Jesus, I realized he was anything but. Jesus said he's the way to God. He's the one who brings meaning and purpose to your life. He said he's the truth. He said he's the life, that true fulfillment is found in a relationship with God through him.
Alpha is a place where you can be yourself. You can say what you think and challenge everything. No question is too complex or too simple. And what your point of view is as important as anyone else's.
And over the weeks ahead, we are going on a journey together, an adventure to explore the questions of life, faith, and meaning. Think of it this way. If you live to be 70, you're going to spend 20 years and 3 months asleep, 10 years and 5 months watching TV, 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation, 7 years and 6 months eating and drinking. You have approximately 570,000 hours left to live. So why not spend less than 24 of them asking life's biggest questions?
Welcome to Alpha.
So what you were looking at on that video is the first video of what is called an Alpha film series. It's a place where online, it's a group of people and they get together, sometimes online, sometimes in person. But right now, there's an online Alpha course in session, and that was video number 1. And so the next one will run on Thursday evening at 7:30 p.m. And you can join the group. I'm going to put that link in the chat for you. But check out alpha.com or click on the link that I put in the comments, which is parkridgechurch.com/alpha, and join the group. And that is another way to explore and deal with life in a way that doesn't have one stigma, maybe another one, I don't know. But it opens up the possibilities of how to deal with life, not by yourself, in a group with others, but also learning something through these film series that kind of walk you through and help you understand that you're just not in this life alone. So thanks for watching Newsworthy Stories with Jacqueline Jimenez. I'll see you next week.